Welcome to TechRaptor. My name is Andrew Stretch. I'm the Senior Content Manager here at TechRaptor. To start off at the very top, for those who may not be aware of you and your work, can you let us know about you?
My name is Reiner Knizia, and I'm a game designer. I have designed more than 800 games during my creative period, and they are published all over the world with more than 2,000 different editions. Yeah, that's what fascinates me, that's what gives me energy, and I'm always trying to do the next game even better than everything before, which is always a challenge.
This year, Medici, your auction game, got re-released. So what's new about this edition that for new players they might be interested in it, or for returning players that they would want to pick up this new edition?
The original game, Medici, was actually published in 1995. So it is one of our classic games, and it has seen many editions all over the world. But I was very happy that Steamforged picked it up for a new global release. And of course, the challenge is then always, as you say, what new can we offer? What's there? And I think Steamforged has done a wonderful job of presenting the game graphically and making very attractive components. So the wooden pieces are all printed with multiple colors, with icons and with pictures on them. So we have nice ships, printed ships. So you have the wooden piece, but then you have ship printed on the wooden piece, and you go around on the track. And you have all the markers, which are very important to kind of record your monopolies. And these are not just wooden single color markers, but they are multicolored with nice icons on them, the nice traders who happen to be running the Medici enterprise.
So it was Steamforged Games that approached you that said, hey, we would like to do this, or had you already been working with them?
This is the first game we're doing with Steamforged. There is the wider Medici family in the pipeline with Steamforged. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say it, but I say it anyway. There will be a new and yet unpublished family member of Medici coming as well, which is a little bit upmarket and a little bit more sophisticated. Of course, we have other family members to the Medici group, the card game and the dice game, but we're mainly talking now about the big, just released the big board game, the classic, the base game, and we are then talking about something which is maybe a challenge for those people who want to go a little bit deeper without taking it over the top, of course.
For someone who's been releasing games for so many years, at what point do you look back at some of your earlier games and maybe think that you would like to remaster something either graphically or even refine or add mechanics?
This is a very good question, because there are some games which had their time, and time moves on and people have different expectations, and therefore if they had their time, then it's fine. We don't have to press them back into the market. But we also have quite a number of the classic games, and Medici is certainly one of them. And then there are two things. You can first of all see if we believe in a brand, if we believe in this game, then it usually becomes a family of games. As we just discussed with Medici, the different games promote each other, they cross-fertilize each other, and they give different fans different possibilities and routes into that family of games. So that's one thing, to branch out and to see what is reasonable, not to overburden the family, but to give it a little bit more substance. And of course, then the question is, what do we do with respect to re-releases? My idea here is always to keep, when a publisher had it for a while and then the sales go down or the publisher moves in a different direction, we get in a very friendly manner, we get the rights back, and then we let it rest a little bit. So that means there will be new players and the game is not available for a while. And that helps the game then for a restart. And then we want to give it something new. And with this new restart, sometimes it goes a Kickstarter, sometimes it's different routes, there are different outlets these days. Times and markets change. And when we think the time is right, then we look for the right publisher. And then, of course, we are interested that the publisher carries more, if we have a family, more than an individual game. And then, as in this case, as I maybe have given away the secret, then there is a new family member and so. But it depends, and I think we are lucky, and I'm very grateful that we have a number of classics, and sometimes people go then and reach via Kickstarter, via crowdfunding, a completely new audience. The world has become much more global. Well, recently maybe there's a step back from it, but the world is much more global than it was in the 90s when some of the classics came out. And there are new opportunities, there are new players, there are new generations of players, and that all opens up the world for these interested players to experience, I would say, the timeless classics, for those which stand the test of time and are still very relevant.
You spoke about it a bit with the changes in the audience and the changes in the world, but approaching the industry as a game designer and as someone who's designed so many games, how has the industry itself changed from when you began to now?
Well, one of the points is, as I just alluded to, it has become a much more global industry. I'm less talking about all the supply chains and all the different production opportunities or also obstacles when problems occur, as we have seen through the pandemic. I'm more talking about the much wider network of publishers. We don't really have individual publishers operating in a single market, and that's it. Publishers, because of the economy of scale, most of the publishers have actually established a network where they cross-publish. So when one publisher has a design, they would talk to this network, and a lot of other people in the network in different markets would then localize the game, and therefore it would actually get a bigger push throughout the world. Or we have different outlets, as I said, with crowdfunding, where you suddenly have the opportunity, and I think that's particularly relevant for some of the classic games, to make a wonderful deluxe edition, because through the crowdfunding you can actually have higher prices and give people a wonderful game with components and with extras, which you could not only market through the retail world. And sometimes there are possibilities in production, sometimes that you have new production opportunities, like printing on wood. It wasn't possible. I mean, it wasn't possible. Everything is possible. It's just a question at what price. And so it is now possible to really afford that and put that into a game and make it wonderful. When I started designing, there was no desktop publishing. I had little rubber stamps and I illustrated my prototypes with this. So it's Stone Age, and things change a lot. I mean, we're also talking, of course, about the digital world, which is not the topic here. But of course, there is windfall opportunities, I might call them, if you're a classical board game designer, about what can be taken into apps or into other ways of digital outlets. And again, it cross-fertilizes each other. The digital players suddenly discover, oh, there is also a board game of this digital game, sometimes not even realizing that that's the origin of the digital game. It depends.
Yeah.
So this is one of the very relevant trends, the network and the more global reach of the games. Of course, in general, games are a mirror of our times. And when time moves on and when life moves on and people live in a different world, as we do every decade, things change. People expect different things from the games. They expect the games to be relevant, to be really exciting for them still, what has meaning in their life. And so sometimes we would even look at themes and adapt themes over the time. And it's you cannot rest on laurels from the 90s. You need to be quite clear of what's up today. What do the players expect? And this you cannot estimate that enough and really take that enough into account how much the times actually change. For us, mostly when talking to publishers, but of course the publishers then are close to the markets. What they need today is quite different from what the publishers need 10 or 20 years ago. But again, it's nice because we don't only have the network, we also have the niches and people go for different things. So it is also a secret of knowing the much bigger markets today and knowing the players, meaning for us, the publishers in the markets, and see what game is right for which publisher, and also understanding which games should better not be designed because they're kind of unsellable. Sometimes you get big surprises, but it's a certain experience what will be successful today.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to lead in the past. I know that you've talked about how you approach a lot of things in life, thinking about how could this be a game. I think in some interviews you even referenced it as a curse. But you know, are there any ideas or game mechanics that you've thought of in the past that you just haven't been able to implement?
Well, the curse of the ideas is essentially, I mean that in a funny way. It's I don't have a designer block or whatever you call it. I have too many ideas, and you know, creating ideas, it takes experience, and it takes kind of also knowledge what ideas are really so strong and fruitful that you want to work on them. But the idea is only the starting point. The development process in making this game, giving it enough meat and making it powerful enough and bringing it to its full potential, and then playtesting and tuning and fine-tuning it is a lot of work, if you want, a lot of fun, whatever you want to say, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. And therefore, generating many ideas is one thing, but then bringing these ideas to light in a, what I would say, perfect game, and perfect is a difficult word, but I'm a perfectionist, and so not giving up too early is the real challenge. And it's no point in starting lots of ideas and then not bringing them out to the world. So this is something where I'm blessed, because I have many of these opportunities, and that's also that these designs, these ideas, these developments are in constant competition with each other, and those which are most promising, which are most exciting to play, will get the time, and those which fall behind for 1 or 2 years and I haven't looked at them, I might have another good look, and then they may no longer get going. But that's an easy selection process. It's not so painful. I mean, killing your children in inverted commas is a hard thing, but if they simply fade out, then that's much better. Yes. So this is the part of having these many ideas. Of course, over time, the design process now with all the desktop publishing and the availabilities has become more sophisticated, because I don't just design the mechanism. When we play games, I do actually have a prototype which I want to get as perfect as possible, also with respect to graphics, with respect to layouts, with respect to presentation. It's not the final graphics, because each publisher has their own idea and their own style, but I then see, okay, these numbers are too small, these colors do not really fit, they interfere with the player colors, these spaces are too small, this is unclear that that's neighboring this. So it is actually evolving as a whole integrated design, which is then essentially well tested and rounded when it goes to the publisher.
And do you find like having your input and such dedication to every aspect of the product ends up building that better final product, versus having like a team of artists and then a team of designers kind of all separately working?
They are still working separately in a way, because once we deliver our final prototype to a publisher, and then, of course, we have put a lot of effort into the game, and then our expectation is that we find an equally professional publisher. It always takes both sides to make a good product, and a bit of luck. And of course, then there would be an artist coming and doing it, and if the artist is experienced, usually that's the case with games, the artist then would start anew, but he or she has a very clear template of how things could look like, and then he can add his professionalism to this. But we also have to keep in mind, for example, if we design a board, the board is not a nice picture painting that goes to the wall to be nicely admired. The board will be laid on the playing field, and then we will have pieces and we'll have components on it, and only with these it must then look nice and be functional. If the board is in itself a wonderful colorful painting and then you can't see the pieces on it anymore and it becomes very confusing because there's too much going on once it's filled, then you have a masterpiece but you don't have a good game. Yes, so this is then what plays together, and that's what I mean with keeping the colors and keeping the layout nice but functional and subservient, if you want, to the game function.
Over your years, you've not just worked on and designed and built your own games, but you've also worked with major IPs such as Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and The Simpsons. How is the process different when you're building your own idea versus looking at a property and trying to design for that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because there is a very big difference. Of course, the market, one of the trends, of course, is also the market has become much bigger. There are many more publishers. There are many more novelties and new releases every year. Thousands. And of course, the temptation is here. How do I stand out from the crowd? And when I talk to publishers, they usually tell me, we want the game which really stands out from everything else. Yes, this is an impossible task, because not every game can stand out from every other game. So you need to find certain inroads. One of the inroads is to say we don't look for individual games, we are looking for brands. Brands, we've talked about this, is a strong footing that you build more than a single shot, and you build on the brand, build the brand. The brand can come from a successful game spreading out, as we said. The brand can also be a very innovative game system, which is then carrying a number of independent games. But also the brand as such can come from the outside, and that's your question, when we talk about really strong IPs. Now, strong IPs are not the key and the miracle to everything, because strong IPs usually mean that you have a much higher guarantee. That means the publisher has a much higher guarantee, because they need to get the rights to use that brand. And then the question is, how much merchandise is out there from this brand? Because then you have the same thing. If you have too many, let's say, Harry Potter games, then the question is, okay, so how do we stand out from the crowd with the Harry Potter games? And then it turns around and say, okay, let's take a very famous designer, and maybe that combined does it. But back to your origin of the question. Of course, what is always nice and wonderful is to make a free design, as it was with Medici. Sit there, get inspired, and this time through history, and I love history, and see how can I put this into a wonderful world. And that was a time when the Mediterranean was not flooded by hundreds of game ideas. Yes, so so this is wonderful, because a game is like a child in a way. You look at its potential, and then you can guide it and try it to fulfill its full potential and grow, but you cannot force it in a direction. So I start and want to make a card game, and suddenly say, oh, it may be better tiles because the layout is too big, and then we can't really order the tiles. Maybe we should have a board to put it on it, then it's too big and too costly maybe. And so it meanders around, and essentially it ends up with something maybe completely different in a free design. Of course, if I want to do a Lord of the Rings game, for example, as we did, the situation is different, because in the first place, we already need a publisher, because I cannot take the high guarantees and then not find a publisher from Tolkien Enterprises. So a publisher. Then, of course, the publisher has an idea of when should it come out? Tomorrow. Yes. Then the publisher has an idea, of course, the price range, yes, the target group, how many players potentially, but also from a timing point of view, can we even afford to have pieces made in China, because China is a big game producer, which is making lots of plastic pieces, and plastic had a different image than it has today, maybe. So there are different things coming in. So there are lots of restrictions, and this means it needs a lot of experience, first of all, to withstand the pressures of promising early delivery dates, because the design process, a creative process, is like the child. You don't know where you wander to, and therefore it needs to have a realistic time frame. And what I do with such projects is that I actually spend quite a bit of time in the beginning before I commit, and look at it and say, does it gel with me? Can we do something? How would it roughly look like? This is an investment where we sometimes then have to say at the end, no, we can't do it, or where the project is just, if it's a vague question, doesn't even happen. So, but I'd rather like to understand what I'm committing to, and then I pride myself of keeping deadlines and delivering the promised stuff. And I think that's an image you want to build as a designer, so that the publisher always knows they get it. And then, of course, it's a challenge to stay true to the individual property. I mean, you mentioned The Lord of the Rings. It's a very good example, because I remember very clearly when I said, okay, I'll do it. Then you need to read the book, yes? And then you're reading the book, and the book is long, and you say, yeah, but if I read the book, do I really get it? So I had to hook up with a lot of fans of The Lord of the Rings, yes, and say, what's the real stuff that excites you, yes, because the book is one thing, yes, and find and put these aspects into the game. And then you want to be true to the audience. And that means, okay, when people read the book, or which came luckily quite after that, watch the movie, then the question is, what's their viewpoint? What do they expect? And so I found myself, I mean, as I say, I found myself growing hair on my feet, because the viewpoint is in The Lord of the Rings, we are all the hobbits. And Sam does not take a knife and ram it into the back of Frodo to get the ring. We are one fellowship. And suddenly you see yourself in a situation where you say, I need to have a cooperative gameplay. Cooperative gameplay is common today, but when we did The Lord of the Rings 25 years ago, there were no cooperative games. And I know the jury for the Game of the Year actually said, oh, yeah, you can play it once and then it's boring, yes. And then afterwards they gave me an award for the best literature prize, literature in game, yes. So it's breaking new ground. And this, I've given you a long answer. This is something which I really love. Challenges which force me to leave the trodden path. Because innovation does not happen when you walk along comfortably along a trodden path. And Lord of the Rings, and I stop with this topic because Medici is our topic, but this was one where it really forced me to rethink, and it turned out very successfully, yes. And these challenges are wonderful.
And that's really beautiful. I love the idea of, raising a board game like a child and wanting the best for it, and then graduation day it's published and you just see it go out. Are there any specific games that you love when people bring up to you?
You mean when I see other people's games, or when publishers approach me?
When someone's telling you, I really love this game that you designed, there's like your big popular hits. Are there any smaller hits that you just really like to hear, someone mention or someone bring up?
No. The most wonderful, we're very blessed, because in our industry, we are not selling washing powder or anything which is kind of just a commodity. We are selling something which is really bringing enjoyment to the people. That's the motto of my doing. It's bringing enjoyment to the people, and really being blessed that people feel their lives enriched to the products we are doing. And therefore, it's the biggest reward you can get when fans come back to you and say, we really loved that, or that brought me together, or I met my girlfriend or my new wife through playing Lost Cities, which is actually a true story. And Lost Cities, we played through cities we found together, and it's wonderful how the games sometimes shape lives, and that's the biggest reward. Is much more rewarding than money. We earn enough money to live off it, and that's what we need, and the rest is really doing where the heart is. And you never know. I mentioned luck several times. With all the professionalism I'm trying to put in, and with all the selection of having the right publisher for the right game, you can only do so much. You can prepare the ground and get the harvest. How good the harvest is and how much you will get rewarded from people it really taking off is always also a lucky part. And yeah, sometimes a small game like Llama takes off and suddenly becomes a real top seller, even nominated for the game of the year for a small game. You never know. And then there are also some expectations where the first expectations do not get fulfilled completely. And then you ask yourself, what happened? Was it just a bad start and then people fell into this? Or was it that the publishing wasn't quite right? Should I rework the designs? And that's sometimes also where we started. That's sometimes also the reason to republish a game and say, okay, let's revisit it and let's see if you cannot give this game a second chance if we believe.
The re-release of Medici is out now, I believe, and then apparently, there's a new member of the family on the way. Is there anything else that fans of your work should be looking to the horizon for?
Well, this is always a tricky thing, because I talked about the partnership between us as designing the game, and the partner then producing, marketing the game. And so I welcome our publishers to comment and recommend on the designs, but not to completely interfere with it and take it apart. And the same thing is true for their task. And therefore, when they look at the games and they market the games and they bring them out, and then they don't want me to give away secrets as I now did, but it is, I think, in the spirit of Steamforged to interfere with completely their announcements and the release dates, and then the Knizia comes along and spoils everything. So unfortunately, I'm not going to spoil things, but there are some I would say that, but I do truly believe it. There are some very strong and exciting novelties in the pipeline, and so I'm sure you will report on them when you hear the first rumors. And so people should rather turn to you than to me to see what's new. But at the moment, I cannot share. I've given you one big secret, so that's good for one time.
Okay, I'll take that and I'll leave. I won't press anymore. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time today to talk with us about the re-release and about the greater designing conversation. This has been an absolutely fantastic chat. I know that you said that you were worried about those long answers, but I was enthralled by them all.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And yes, you're absolutely right. The answers are sometimes not so simple. It's not black and white. And to go a little bit deeper, I think gives sometimes a better understanding of what the challenges are and what the pleasures are.